Anthony Crimmins, StickStar Lacrosse, component-based instructional methodology, Pillar 9, throwing mechanics. At StickStar, we believe that it's important to remove all false motions, all inefficient motions from your throwing mechanics. This will ultimately create a repeatable and consistent throwing motion. Ultimately, we want to be able to throw the ball and finish the ball consistently by snapping our wrists. This is Pillar 9, throwing mechanics, snapping. So in this video, what will we cover? We will discuss our body positioning. We will discuss our arms and our structure. We'll talk about top hand snap, bottom hand snap, two-handed mechanics, problem analysis. This is the breakdown for Pillar 9. So let's just talk about throwing in general. What are the keys to throwing? Well, we want to be consistent. How do we get consistent? The easiest way to get consistent is to remove variables. What are the variables? Well, there's a lot of them, and we want to make sure that we understand most of them. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to control the top of the ball when we throw. The ball's not in there, but that's what we want to control, is the top of the ball. So how are we going to do that? Well, one of the things that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to keep our elbows up, just like we've discussed before. At StickStar, we believe that you have two hands on the stick. So if you've got two hands on the stick, you should use both of them. Now, we'll talk about top hand versus bottom hand and how they work together. But for us, our bottom hand is going to be our initiator. With a catapult, they don't push the boulder out, it's pulled out, right? But we'll also discuss where we pull, not down, but back. So we want to use two hands to initiate the motion. Another variable is we want to keep the stick on line. We discussed being squared, a 4-point pass. Well, if you're pulling across, right, the stick is no longer on a line. So we want to keep our stick on a line so that the ball is constantly moving forward. What's another variable? High or low. We want to make sure that when we throw passes, the ball stays up. So when we throw the ball, we want our arms to stay up and we want to finish up, our hands staying up, snapping the ball out, releasing it, and then ultimately finishing. So when we talk about throwing, there's a lot of variables. We want to remove most of them from our mechanics. So this is just a throwing discussion. So now we're going to start to break down our mechanics for throwing. We're going to begin just with everything else, component-based, with our top hand, but more importantly, with our body. We've talked about it before, but first we're going to start with our feet squared up. Everything is square. Next, our elbow is going to be up. Our elbow is going to come straight out from our shoulder. Our hand is going to be at a 45-degree angle from our elbow. Our hand is ultimately equal with our face. Our hand, the stick is not in the palm. It's out in the fingertips. We've discussed keeping the stick from the pads of your fingers out. So, pads my fingers out, thumb on one part, on one side, middle part of the index finger on the other. 3 fingers are draped here, outside of the palm. Feet squared, elbow up, hand up from our elbow, even with our face. Now we're ready to snap. Let's talk about snapping our wrist, snapping our top hand. To begin, we get into our position, but we're going to start with just the ball, right? My arms are up, my elbows are up, my hand is out in front, even with the face or the top of my head. So the first thing I want to be able to do is snap the wrist, right? I'm snapping my wrist, it's up and it's locked, and now I'm rolling it over. The way I want you to think about this is if you're dunking a cookie. There's a stack of books, there's a glass of milk on top of the books. I have a cookie in my hand and I'm dunking the cookie. A lot of people push the ball out with their top arm. So if you're here and you push, you knock the books over. If you're here and you drop your hands, like a lot of people do, you knock the books over as well. We want to be here, ready to dunk the cookie. Now, one of the variables that we'll discuss is bringing the stick back before you throw it. When you bring the stick back before you throw it, the ball's going to roll. So if I'm here, it won't roll much in this one. But a lot of people will bring the stick backward before they go to throw it. That's inefficient motion. You don't have to bring something back to make it go forward. So when you bring the stick back, the ball moves. It rolls up your stick. That's not consistent. That's variable, right? The ball is in motion. You're trying to control something in motion before you throw it. We don't want to do that, right? We want to make sure that our hands are set. So they're going to be here, up. And the only place that we'll go from this position is forward. So if I had the ball in my hand, I would never want to do this. We want to snap and then reset. Snap, reset. Snap, reset. So now we can do this with the stick. We have our structure, our arms are up. I'm going to snap. Now, when I snap, I want to make sure that I'm finishing at 45, right? A 45-degree angle, a diagonal line. So it goes from 45 here, I rotate my wrist, and I finish at a 45-degree angle there. This is the most efficient way to release the ball from the stick. This is the top hand snap. So now we're going to discuss the bottom hand. This is going to be strange. It's going to be different, but that's fine. Most of this stuff has been. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our structure. Again, our arm is out, coming straight out from my shoulder. Now our arm is away. So we're out in front. If our arms were here with our arms up, this bottom hand is out in the space. Again, we want to start with just the ball because we're going to focus on creating our structure first. Our elbows are away from our body, right? This elbow is away. There is space. Now, for us at StickStar, the bottom hand is the motion initiator, right? So it will ultimately be pulling back. We'll discuss why pulling back versus pulling down in a little bit. But to begin, we want to be able to rotate this wrist. So if you're thinking about it, you're thinking about turning a doorknob from the side, right? Everybody plays hide and seek. You're trying to hide the doorknob. You're turning it. You're trying to stay skinny, kind of open up and get through. That's what we're doing here, right? Everybody's played hide and seek. You still play hide and seek, right? So right here, our hand is away. We're going to turn our wrist, rotate, reset. Turn and rotate, pushing our thumb through, hooking back with our bottom three fingers. Rotate, rotate. Now, we do it with the stick. Finger knuckles on the center line, thumb on the back ridge, arms are away. Pulling back with those three fingers, pushing the thumb through, finishing at 45. Now this is going to be difficult, right? This structure, rotating our wrist, snapping. But this is an initial motion that we want to try to figure out. Rotating our wrist, snapping with our bottom hand. This is our bottom hand snap. So now we are well into our foundational set for the component-based instructional methodology. We have worked on a ton of different skills. And this is the first time we will start to talk about putting 2 hands on the stick to throw, which means that there's a ton for you to work on before you get to this spot. You don't have to start with throwing and catching. You can gain a lot of skill before you get to it. But now we're here. We're ready to snap. So the first thing we're gonna do, again, no stick. Why no stick? Because we wanna make sure that our body position is sound, right? This is our entire structure. This is our foundation for throwing. So our feet are squared, our elbows are up, our hands are away. Now, what I want you to think about is what hand are you going to initiate with? You're going to initiate with your bottom hand pulling and pushing back, right? Not pulling down. Let's talk about that briefly. Why not down? Well, where do we want the ball to stay? We want the ball to stay up. So if we want the ball to stay up, our hands shouldn't finish down. If I have my hands here and I pull down, the head of my stick will go down. It's impossible for it to stay up. We want the ball to stay up. When Dirk or Luca shoot, they finish with their hand up and they snap their wrist. A great quarterback is gonna throw and he's gonna leave his hand up. He's not gonna throw and then drive his hand to the ground. They're not gonna shoot and then drive their hand to the ground. So if it works for them, it works for us. So we initiate with that bottom hand, keeping our hands up. So we're here, elbows up, pulling back with our bottom hand, rotating our wrist, snapping, staying over the top of the ball. Generating power with the bottom hand, snapping our top wrist. So with the stick, again, we want to make sure we have our grips. We're going to start by being choked up. Our elbows are up. We're going to pull back with the bottom hand, initiate the motion, snap over the top. Our stick is going from 45 to 45. How much is the stick moving? Not very much. This is the most efficient motion you can have for releasing the ball. Generating power, initiating the motion with our bottom hand, snapping our top wrist, finishing at 45. This is how we throw the ball with 2 hands. This is our 2-hand snap. These are our throwing mechanics. Snap. So let's kind of expand upon that. Immediately, power is going to become an issue. People are going to say, well, I'm just using my hands. How do I generate enough power to throw the ball? It's going to take a little time, and you're going to have to get used to snapping the ball out. Ultimately, the better you get at initiating with this bottom hand, right, is where you're going to start to generate more of your power. What are things that we can do to immediately generate more power? A lot of people, when they have you throw, have you point your shoulder like you would in baseball or football. We find this problematic because the lines are difficult. When I'm squared up, all of the lines are much easier. So how can we generate power when we're squared up? Well, we can still step, and we can step actually with each foot. But before we do that, we're gonna stagger our feet. So if my feet are right underneath my hips, I'm gonna drop my right foot back. But notice my feet still remain square. You'll see when kids do this, their feet will be at all different angles. We wanna stay square, drop our right foot back, and now we're staggered. So now we can create a little momentum. We can rock. So now when we rock and we hit this foot, now we snap. Rock and then snap. So now this is our step that we're getting, right? So that's an initial issue. The next thing is we've been choked up the entire time. You can also move your hands to the bottom of the stick. This is going to allow you to create more momentum. Again, we don't want our stick to be flat. We don't want our elbows to be down. We'll talk about that in the problem analysis. But our hands are up. Our shoulders are squared. I'm going to rock, pull back and under, and then snap, finishing my hands up, hoping to create more power, generating more momentum. One other piece of the equation is this elbow and the power it can generate. So now if you look at the stick from the side, you're going to see a triangle. The last piece is elbow to hand. So when I pull back and under, if my elbow just stays there, you're going to start to see this happen, right? I pull back into my elbow, my wrist, it's all kind of in a bad situation here. So all I'm going to do is just gently lift my elbow up. As I pull back and under, my elbow raises up, and now I can snap my wrist. So I pull back and under, elbow up, snap my wrist. You can see there's a handle here that's turning. There's kinetic motion going on here. I translate it. I pull back and under, my elbow drives up, and then I snap. Snap. So now I can generate power here. Pull back and under, elbow up, snap. Snap. So now I'm squared up. I'm here. My feet are staggered. I rock, pull back and under, snap, with my hands staying up. This is how we can start to generate a little bit more power with our arms when we start to work on this. So let's discuss some of the problems that can arise when you're trying to throw. For us at StickStar, the elbow down, and obviously there's a lot of different ways to do it. This is the way that we look to build consistency, and we've done it for 20 years, and we think we've been successful at it. Elbow down, right? Taking the stick flat. If you want to increase consistency in a wide range of players, this is something that you can work through. Why is the elbow being down an issue? Again, we talked about it, and you've seen it at a beginner game. The passes that just randomly go straight into the sky, or the ball that falls out of the back of the stick. Why does that happen? That happens because the stick is going flat, right? The elbow is dropping. The ball is rolling up, and now you're not maintaining control of the top of the ball. So as this elbow goes down, now it can start to roll out, and it goes straight up into the air. So what are two things, or a couple of things, that take the stick flat? Well, the first is this elbow dropping, right? The elbow dropping takes the stick flat. So we want to keep our elbow up, right? The next thing that takes the stick flat is the bottom hand coming too far up. For a variety of reasons, players will just punch this hand up, and now the stick is going flat. So we want to try to combat that. Why? Well, at the end of the game, when you're tired, you need to be able to complete important passes. Your arms are tired, so naturally, these things are going to start to happen more. If you're used to keeping both of your hands up, you will greatly increase the consistency of your passes at the end of the game. Because you know, as long as you keep your elbows up, you snap, and you release with your top hand up, the ball will stay up and online. So let's talk about online. Pulling with your bottom hand across naturally takes your stick off of line. Right now, I'm squared, my arms are up. My stick is on line. Everything is moving in one direction. But as you pull across, now these are all of the paths that the ball could take. The trajectory could be anywhere on that path. We want to make sure to keep the ball straight. Our stick is on line. we're pushing back with our bottom hand. Again, if we pull down and our top hand drops, the ball now has a reason to go down from the beginning. So, what did we just talk about? 1, errors that occur. The ball rolling out or going high. We want to keep the stick at a good angle, right? So that the stick doesn't go flat. Pulling the ball off of the line. That's another error, right? Now it's missing in all of those directions. Now it's staying straight. The last thing, keeping the ball up. The best way to do that is to finish with our hands up. Those are some of the key errors with throwing motions and just variables that we can control. So let's take what we just discussed, snapping, and immediately relate it to an important skill for a lot of young players, which is finishing and finishing on a cake. So one of the first things that a goalie is going to be taught is to match the stick. So if my stick finishes low and I push the ball out low with my top hand, the goalie is just going to match the stick. Well, with the snap, you're able to release the ball to every spot on the goal with the same mechanics. So the first thing, my feet are squared here, 1 foot towards each pipe. My elbows are up. If I want to challenge the goalie to the bottom right corner, I can pull back and under and snap my top hand and release it to the bottom corner. Hands up, snap. Hands are finishing up, ball is going low. Now, my hands are up. I can also release it towards the top right corner. Same mechanics, right on the hip. So I'm using the same mechanics and I'm able to hit every single spot on the back pipe. Feet are square, hands are up, but most certainly attacking the principle of matching the stick. Hands up, finishing in the bottom right corner. So that's our ability to snap the ball out with our hands as it relates to finishing. And we'll talk about that a ton more at a later date. So that was Pillar 9, our throwing mechanics. In Pillar 9, we discussed our top hand mechanics, our bottom hand mechanics, snapping with 2 hands on the stick. We had a discussion about reducing inefficiency of motion, and we also talked about the errors that can arise with throwing. Ultimately, these mechanics will help you be more consistent by removing variables and snapping your wrists. This is also the conclusion of our foundational set. There is a wooden set which helps you create feel in basketball. Our goal is to have this StickStar foundational set be similar to that. We believe that you can increase your feel. We believe through these foundations, you can have an understanding of how to be successful as a player, a beginning player, a player who's plateaued, that needs help with their offhand, or a parent that wants to gain some functional movement with the stick. This foundational StickStar set should help you do that. And this is a conclusion of our initial 9 pillars. Thank you so much.